welcome to our March 26th Strategic Planning Committee meeting. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 5:30 exactly. And I'm going to do a quick roll call, and then we'll have the team go around and do introductions. So I'm going to go ahead and do that once here. Marty Gator will be joining us probably later. Mike Eister.
Here.
Vidal Francis. Councilor Greg Evans, pardon me.
I've just promoted him to the panelist. He should be popping in here in just a moment.
Okay, perfect. All right,
I'm
Councilor Evans is on.
Yes.
Beth Blackwell.
Here.
Heather Buck, Commissioner Heather Buck.
Here.
Claire Syrett.
Here.
Gino Grimaldi.
Here.
Pete Knox.
Here.
Perfect. And we have, Greg Evans is on. And Marty was calling me. I think he's telling me he's probably getting on. So I just saw my phone ring. So just so y'all know. So because we do have some new folks and familiar faces and also a couple of folks that we don't know on the call, we're going to go ahead and do quick introductions. So if you just want to say your name and who your association outside of the SPC. And we'll go ahead and start with Vidal.
Vidal Francis. Thank you. Vidal Francis, with Oregon Department of Transportation. I'm the area manager here responsible for project delivery in Lane County.
Hello, I'm Beth Blackwell. I'm Springfield City Councilor.
Rob Zako, Better Eugene Springfield Transportation, formerly Transit. Originally Transit.
Gino Grimaldi, LTD board member.
Hello, everyone. Alma Fumiko Jesus. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with United Way.
Pete Knox, LTD board member.
Claire Syrett, community member.
Online, let's start with Mike.
Mike Eister, community member.
Commissioner Buck.
Hi, Heather Buck, Lane County Commissioner for District 5, and this is my very first meeting, so go easy on me.
Thanks for being here. And forgive me if I can't see names from up here. Emma.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emma Huang. I'm a senior consultant with InfraStrategies, and we are here today to talk about the community outreach and communications assessment.
Councilor Evans. We're just having folks go ahead and introduce themselves. Councilor Evans, if you want to go ahead.
Greg Evans, Eugene City Council, Ward 6.
Thank you. And Joshua, I believe.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Joshua Shank, also with InfraStrategies, working on the COCA project. So here to brief you today, coming to you from Los Angeles.
Thank you. Allie, did I get everyone?
Yes.
All right. No, it seems there's no adjustments to the agenda right now. We're going to go ahead and move into public comment. Okay, see, we have no one online for public comment. We're going to go ahead and jump into our agenda. First, we have, with the consent agenda, anything for the consent agenda? Like, see, we have nothing there. So going into business updates, discussions, and presentations, we're going to kick off with Amy, going through our strategic performance results. Thank you.
Right. Hey, everyone. We're a little out of order here. I already did the update to the board. Usually I like to come to you all first, but that's okay because I didn't dig in with the board and we are going to dig in tonight. So a lot of you are new, so I'll just introduce myself. I'm Amy Reichert. I'm our Chief Performance Officer at LTD. It's actually a new role and department here. I'm going to be responsible for overseeing our performance management of the organization, specifically through the lens of metrics. And we'll be standing up a business intelligence unit. We already have our first two business intelligence analysts that have recently started with the team. It's a new team, but between the two of the business intelligence analysts. They have 25 years of experience at LTD. They both started here as operators. So we're really excited to have a lot of experience hit the ground running. So that's going to be over the next several quarters. We'll be standing up that unit and really kind of defining out different key performance indicators across all of the departments and figure out how we can use the intelligence that we have in our very rich data assets to actually make some informed decisions. You think about data in an organization is actually one of our biggest assets. You know, we have fleets and we have buildings and then we have data. And if it just sits there unused, it's a kind of waste. So we really want to tap into that asset and make sure that we're getting value from it. So that's what we'll be doing. That's who I am. And now let's talk about the strategic business plan and our quarterly results. So we adopted a strategic business plan 3 years ago. And since then, we've been reporting to the board and this committee about quarterly. And there's a set of key performance indicators that help guide us to determine, are we moving towards the outcomes that we've set for ourselves? So that's what we're going to look at tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so in your agenda packets, the first thing you have here is just an update on all of the milestones that we've set out in the strategic business plan. The main thing I want to highlight here is it's green. There's all green. So in performance tracking, green is a good thing. It means we're on track. This is the first time in the history of this plan that we've been all green. I'm a pretty hard rater. There is some objectivity here. We're basing it on measures, but there is some subjectivity too. Are we getting the work done? And so I'm typically pretty hard on us, and I am happy to report that as of this last quarter, we are on track with the milestones that we've set for ourselves. So that is good news. Now we're going to get into the meat of it. So some of you have, I think our board members have iPads. Most of you don't. So you'll have to follow along on the screen. There is a link. I'm going to click on it. You can click on this when you get home. This is our public-facing performance dashboard. And this is where we're tracking all of our KPIs. So that's what we're going to dig in tonight. Let me just make sure I'm not key performance indicator. Thank you. So key performance indicator, KPI, I'm going to say KPI from now on, but key performance indicator, just to define, is a measure. And it's a measure of some kind of performance that we think is key in the work that we're doing. So that's a KPI. Okay, so we've gotten to the dashboard, and now we're going to do some data exploration. At the front page here, we have our highest level outcomes highlighted. Customer satisfaction. Specifically, we're looking at on-time performance because that is something that we know is important to our customers. They've told us that. And what this shows quarter over quarter is we're stable. We actually have really strong on-time performance. That's been consistent over time. We have an employee engagement metric here, which is our total count of operators. This is a huge focus for us right now. Recruitment. We need to, in order to increase service, we need to have operators. And so we're focusing on that really heavily. Quarter over quarter, we did go up 6%, and we are continuing to hire actively. We've got 2 full classes coming up. So we're doing a lot of work in that area. In community value, we have our vehicle revenue hours. So this is the total number of hours that we're actually putting out into service. This is the number that we want to see going up and up and up. It did go up slightly quarter over quarter, but I will warn you, when we come back together in a quarter, it's going to have gone down because we just reduced service. Hopefully everybody's aware of that. We had to do that because of this metric here. And so this is a really critical thing. We're thinking about competing priorities, and that's a big part of what my area is focusing on. Sometimes we're going to have to make difficult decisions when 2 KPIs are in conflict. In this case, more revenue hours, more service on the street is in conflict with having not enough operators. So we made the decision to reduce service while we rebuild operators, with the intention of going back to service once we have stabilized our operators. We got financial health. So in our outcome here, we have maintenance cost per mile. It's $1.62 per mile to maintain our fleet. We're up 3% quarter over quarter. We're going to dig into this one in a second. That one is definitely a trend we're watching. It's more expensive to run our operations right now. There's some logic there, but also things are just getting more expensive. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then we have sustainability. Our sustainability focus here is ridership, because we know that the biggest impact we can have as a transit organization is growing ridership, getting people out of cars and onto some form of mobility that is not a car, and specifically for us in our buses. And we are up 13% quarter over quarter. That sounds really good. I want to call out, though, that that's pretty typical if you look at this quarter, this same time last year, because this data set includes back to school. And we know that we're going to get a bump from the University of Oregon ridership there. Okay, so now we're going to dig in. This is where the presentation stopped with the board. So you all are about to go into uncharted territory with me. Data exploration. Okay, so this is where you can get into all of the measures. So when you open this data exploration page, everything that we're measuring currently at this level, we're measuring a lot of other things underneath of these across all of the different areas, but at this level of this public dashboard, here's all of the things we're measuring. So we're just going to go through them, and I'm going to do it by our focus area. We have 5 focus areas over here on the left. Community value, we'll start there. So when I click on community value, it's going to filter down to just those metrics, the ones that we have identified as community value metrics. So we have job connectivity. This is showing that we have 28.5 thousand jobs that are accessed. And if you want to know, well, how's that being measured? What does that mean? If you come over here, kind of scroll over this little United States icon, the definition is an average total number of jobs accessible within a 45-minute public transportation commute in the defined service area. So we have 28.5 thousand jobs accessible within our defined service area. What does that mean? So we do have some benchmarking going on here, and these ones that have the icon, that means we're benchmarking ourselves against other transit organizations. You have to take that with a grain of salt. We're not the same as all other transit organizations, but at a glance, this is showing we're below the national comparison. So we're not going to dig in too far to that tonight, but that's what we're showing right now. Okay, so we have a job connectivity income disparity measure. This is showing the average total number of jobs accessible within a 45-minute public transportation commute in the defined service area for both workers earning $12.50 or less per month and workers earning more than $3,333 per month. So the total number of jobs accessible between the two income groups is compared with the score greater than 1, indicating low income workers have greater access to transit than high income workers. So basically what this is showing is what's the ratio of low income workers having access to public transit compared to high income workers. And we are above the national average here. So it's showing 1.16, which is above the national average of 1.10. Okay, and then we have our vehicle revenue hours. Again, this is just how many hours are we putting into service. And we're at 56.7 thousand revenue hours, vehicle revenue hours in the last quarter. Okay. I'm going to pause there actually before I go through the next. What questions? Did anybody have any questions so far? Yeah, please.
I kind of do. Is that because our job average is less? Is that why that statistic shows that way?
Which one?
That our percentage of that one right there, yes.
Yes.
That our access to jobs at a lower rate is because just our average of our income is lower than the national, whatever it's being compared to.
That's a great question. It could be multiple factors. I'm probably going to phone a friend here because I know the expert on this is right here. So Tom, do you want to help me out?
Sure. So real quickly, are you familiar with the acronym ALICE? ALICE. Sorry, I have to think through it.
Is that asset limited income constrained employed?
Yeah. We have a higher percentage than the national average in Lake County of that population. And actually in our retreat, which I'll be talking about later, we talked about this issue with a number of community partners around how we need to look at how we're delivering our service to better help those people attain economic mobility through the mobility we can provide. So more on that.
Yeah, and there's a couple other, I've gone back a couple quarters here. There's some measures that we haven't remeasured that, so they're showing a couple quarters old now, but population access is part of it as well. So we have 65% of our general population is within a 10-minute walk of transit in our major municipality area. And then the interesting thing here is we have a measure on, so minoritized groups. I'm not seeing it here. So I can get that to you, but basically what it shows is that we have the same kind of, it's almost 60% of people from identified groups that are within a certain range of transit. So we have more people closer to transit in lower income groups. Any other questions? Good question. Okay. So now we're going to go on to customer satisfaction. Okay, we have a lot going on in customer satisfaction. We measure a lot here. A lot of these are survey related, so they don't actually change quarter over quarter. We measure them annually. There are a few that do change. I'll go through all of these. Accidents per 100,000 miles, that does change quarter over quarter. This is you can see if you highlight over this, it's the goal ambition column. It shows the trend over the last 4 quarters, and you can see that this is actually the trend on goal. So we're actually back at our goal, which is good for accidents per 100,000 miles. Our goal is 2. This last quarter, we had 2.04. This has been a little bit up and down over the last year, and there's lots of factors that can go into it. Those are things that we haven't fully analyzed, but I can say with some confidence that a part of it is we have a lot of newer drivers that are learning our system. Agency courtesy is one that we only measure annually through a survey. So we'll be getting updated results on that this fall. Bus operator complaints per 100,000 miles. That's another one we do measure quarter over quarter. And again, this one we've been consistently meeting our goal. We're below complaints. We're also looking at this process pretty critically right now. Just we want to make sure that we have a really good process for responding to complaints and doing the complete communication loop. So we're closing the loop on those complaints. Customer Net Promoter Score, that's one we'll have an update. That's an annual measure, so I'm not going to go into that one right now. We'll come back to that this fall. Same with customer satisfaction. On-time performance, I already mentioned, that is a quarter over quarter. We're consistently really strong on that, meeting our goal. Perceived on-time performance is an interesting one where we're below what we would expect given how often we're on time, but that's a perception. That's another one that's measured annually. So we'll see where we're at again in the fall. And same, we have perceived safety and perceived security. So all these perception measures are things that we do annually. And we're going to come back to the idea of perception at the end of this when we talk about how are we holding ourselves accountable from a social standpoint. Any questions on customer satisfaction?
I had a question. Is the actual customer satisfaction item there, is that measured by a survey?
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
We use the annual, the American Bus Benchmarking Group completes an annual customer satisfaction survey. We'll actually be kicking that off in the next month. So.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, real quick question here. I see you have your goals listed, you know, of various types and so forth, and obviously some of them you're meeting those targets that you set for yourself. How do you know when when it's time to reassess that goal? You know, because trends change, people change, the business mutate, in different forms of fashion. And then again, if you don't have the answer, no problem. Just trying to see how are you? Obviously, you can keep your same goal, and then you become into a system. You place yourself in a position where you're kind of just keeping the status quo, if you will.
Yeah.
So how do you?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yourself.
We're going to come to that in financial health, but let me tell you. So there's a few ways right now. I think that's a question that we should always be asking ourselves. That's part of the answer, is that we should always be asking ourselves, are we working towards the right goal? But in terms of like goal setting, I'm a big fan of setting a goal and leaving it for a while, even if we're not hitting it. I know we kind of want to like move the target so we like look better, and that's not the intention of this. The intention of this is for us to make sure we're focusing on the right problems at the right time with the right resources. And so we set a goal and we leave it for a little while. If we are leaving it and we're finding like we're consistently hitting it, that's a reason we would want to change it and stretch ourselves. We're consistently missing it, like way missing it. We're going to see that in financial health. We probably didn't set it right in the first place. So that's another opportunity to reassess. I think those are the two big ones. And then just like you've mentioned, we're in an age of volatility. There's so many external factors. So if there's some big factor that comes in, like a pandemic, then we might consider readjusting goals as well.
We have a Jameson raising his hand online. Go ahead, Jameson.
We can't hear you. We have no sound from you. Is it just me? Okay.
No, I can't hear him either.
Right now, I was just checking, you know. We're all not hearing you together. He can ask me this anytime too. I don't know why he's putting me on the spot like this. We see each other regularly, but I'm joking. I kid. This is being recorded, so. Okay, well, customer satisfaction, maybe Jameson will work out his sound. He can put the question in the chat as well. We'll go to employee engagement while Jameson's figuring out his sound. This is another one where we have a lot, and a lot of them are based on surveys, and that survey is also about to kick off. So we're not going to dig too far into these. Active operators this is actually a recently added one. So that's another place where sometimes we know we need to set a new goal because there's some problem that we have to address. So that's another time we would look at goals, but we know we need 215. And actually, this is another one where because of a lot of external factors, we know we need to change that goal and make it higher because it's taking more staff to run the same level of service pre-COVID due to a range of factors. So we're targeting 228. That's our goal. We're at 185 as of last measurement. I actually looked at this today and we were at 179. So we lost some people, but we're gaining many. We just graduated a class of 9. So we're working hard on that. All of these in the middle here, these are all survey questions. So our department's working well together, leadership's invested in success, performance linked to LTD success. We're provided with the tools we need. Employees would recommend LTD as a place to work. So, we're under on a number of these goals. So we'll see how we do in this next round of measurement.
Yeah. I do think that we were able to get Jameson connected through Pat.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm Pat Walsh. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at the district. Jameson just called me. He wanted to make a point that with perceived safety, that we do break that out by gender. And that we do that through our ABBG survey, the American Bus Benchmarking Group survey that we do annually. But that was the point he wanted to make.
Thank you. That's a great point, Jameson. And all of these, actually a lot of these measures, including the employee engagement, any survey data that we're looking at, we're being really intentional about looking at it. And this was a question you had asked several committees ago. We're looking at it by gender. We're also looking at it by race and age as well. So that is very important. Okay, financial health. So I've mentioned this one a few times. The main thing I want to call out here, and I'm going to actually go back one quarter where we have a few more updated measures. It is getting more costly to run the same level of service over time. Part of that is because we've had to reduce service. So there's a productivity equation there. If you're running less service, but you need the same overhead, it's going to cost more. And so if we can increase service, we're going to get more value, and the overall cost to run will be less per mile. Once you'll hit a plateau, and that's what we're trying to figure out is what's that plateau going to look like, and how are we going to need to adjust that goal to be realistic. And supply chain costs. You guys know all about it, right? We're all living it right now. So we're thinking really critically about that and figuring out, I mean, a critical thing is just to be proactive in how we're budgeting. And then also creating a performance department that's focused on efficiencies, maximizing value, using data to make good decisions. That's the intention. Any questions about that? Okay. Am I going way over? I don't usually go very long, so I don't worry about time, but.
I think you have a few minutes.
So the last area we have here is sustainability. And this one, we do have a few updated measures. So this is one where we have a goal for fleet transition to electric, and we hit that goal. We committed to doing 25%. We're at 30%. We're stopping there. So we're going to actually remove that from our KPIs soon because we've hit that goal. We also have a greenhouse gas emission reduction goal that was set forth in our climate action policy in 2020, I think is our climate action policy, where we had said we wanted to cut greenhouse gas emissions down to 0 by 2035. We've set some kind of staged goals for ourselves. So our first goal was a 75% reduction. We're at 52% as of last measurement. So we've achieved 69% of our goal. That's overall. We also have, we can look at this from the use by specifically from our overall, we have 10.5 thousand metric carbon tons. If you break it down to just fleet, which is something that we have more control over, we have only 1.9 thousand, and that's in large part because we've transitioned to 30% electric fleet, and we're using 100% R99 renewable fuel in our diesel fleet. But this is a really important goal discussion that this group needs to have, because right now our climate action policy may not be attainable. And so we need to have a strategic conversation about that. We're not going to do that tonight. We're going to bring that back to you all with more information at a future meeting. And then ridership, which we already talked about. So those are all the main focus areas. And I'm going to pause again and let you guys ask any questions about what I presented.
Commissioner Buck.
Go ahead, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. I have a question on the first item, the transition to electric. Is there not like the next level of transitioning to electric? Why is that the goal and it's going to be removed entirely? Would you not want to continue the transition if I'm very new, so
sure.
if you've already talked about this,
it's a great
I
question.
apologize.
So I'm going to try and catch you up on the last year of conversation probably about this topic. In short, we're finding that the electric fleet it's a newer technology, and there are challenges with new technology, reliability of distance that you can get from a battery charge, how the batteries operate in cold weather. I'm going to phone a friend here again, because I know there's a lot of challenges with having 100% electric fleet. Our number one commitment to sustainability is ridership. And what we've determined through a lot of analysis is that if we were to have more electric fleet or all electric fleet, we would lose the reliability to maintain ridership. That's kind of the really high level answer. Is there anything you would add there? Because it's a really important question for sure, especially for this committee to understand as we're talking about it in the community.
So real quickly, just to add to what Amy said, the issue from, so speaking from a service planning standpoint, looking at how we deploy our fleet efficiently to serve the routes where the ridership is. The electric buses don't go as far before they need a charge as our diesel buses, like nowhere near. And so that means that they are less useful to us than our diesel fueled buses right now. That's just the way the technology is. And so what we've done is we've reached the 30%, which was the initial board goal. But as we look at the technology, we think it's better to kind of watch and wait as others, California, for example, the California properties are going to be going through a lot of experience, and the technologies are going to get better. And, you know, at some point, that's the point where it makes sense to transition more of our fleet to electrics.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, we will bring this topic back, Heather, so this won't be the last that we talk about it. We want this group's input on our climate action policy, which is closely tied to the makeup of our fleet. So more to come on that.
Thank you. And I'm just having slow internet, so I'm going to have my screen off occasionally.
Sure.
Thanks.
First. Yeah. Okay. Well, with the few minutes we have left, what I wanted to talk about last is I sent out an article for y'all to look at. If you didn't look at it, a quick summary. It's about what does accountability mean for the public transportation sector. It's written by the CEO, Rashidi Barnes, out of the Eastern Contra Costa Transit Authority. And this is a quote. He says, future accountability measures should consider the entire social ecosystem, housing, lack of job centers, unneeded highway expansion projects, increased crime, work from home policies, and increased homelessness are all critical social components that impact how the entire transportation network is effective. And so part of what we're considering, we've presented a lot of things here. Some of them are social impact related, job connectivity. A lot of them are more performance related. What's the cost to run a bus, those kinds of things. And so from this group, what we're really trying to get input on is a theory of change around social impact. So through the effort of transportation in the community, what do we hope to achieve from a social standpoint? And what is the mechanism by which we can achieve that? And how are we going to know when we've done it? And the first thing to define there is, well, what is the social impact? So as an example, we have been prioritizing homelessness and unhoused through an investment in a skilled community liaison, Sarah Koski. And we're at a juncture now where we're starting to ask, how do we know if this is working beyond our gut sense? What can we measure? Other things that we are looking at in terms of social impact, job connectivity, sustainability. So I'm going to open up the floor here. This is the part where I'm interested in your input. And Claire, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Flashing red and green. Okay. So I apologize. This is probably a sensitive question. I'd like a little more explanation about what you just said about addressing homelessness or working around homelessness because of the recent policy change around bringing carts onto the bus. Actually, I have a young friend who does not drive, takes the bus to the grocery store, and I bought him a cart to use for that purpose. And now he's being told he cannot bring that cart onto the bus. So he cannot take the bus to Walmart, load up on his groceries, and return home. And so I wanted to share that impact, which was probably unintentional, but he's low income and relies on the bus for transportation. So could you tell me more about what you were saying when you said we were working around homelessness?
Sure.
Is that about housing?
It's not about housing. It's more about right now it's about connecting our unhoused community with correctly using transportation and then accessing alternative resources that are more appropriate for what they're trying to accomplish. So as an example, with the carry-on policy, that decision was made after a lot of research and consideration of exactly what you're talking about. And it came down to the core value of safety. So if you were out riding, especially MX is a really good example, prior to us starting to enact this policy, oftentimes what you would see is aisleways on the bus that were blocked by grocery carts, full carts, and that's not safe. It's not safe to have bottles rolling around. It creates a situation where a larger group of people don't want to use the system because it doesn't feel safe. And so is it appropriate for a person to use the bus to get groceries? Yes, absolutely. we actually do allow carts. There's a certain size limitation. So I'd be curious with your friend, what size is their cart? Were they correctly diverted? Maybe their cart should have been let on. It's a new policy. So we would want to look at that for sure, because we do want people to still be able to get groceries. But should they be bringing, you know, all of their possessions on the bus to, you know, get to a shelter? Maybe that's an important need of the community, and we want to have an impact there, but we don't necessarily think our fixed route service is the best tool for that. So how can we, so what the intention of the community liaison is to help figure out, well, what are alternative ways to meet that need? And then educating that community about why we might have to make these changes. The other thing I do want to just encourage you to let your friend know to call our RideSource call center, because a need like getting to a grocery store is something that you can do an eligibility assessment for, and that they could potentially have a functional need met, determined that they meet that requirement, and then that they can get a service specifically for that need.
Great.
So,
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I don't want to take up more time here on this particular topic, but I would like to learn more about the role of the community liaison.
absolutely, we
Yeah.
can get you that for sure.
So I don't know if this is answering the broader question, but as I thought about this question that you asked us to ponder, I mean, I think obviously access to economic opportunity and jobs is an important function of a transit system. I would also say access, you know, if there's a way to measure access to recreational opportunities. So I also serve on the board of the Eugene Parks Foundation, and we raise capital to, you know, improve our parks. And so thinking about how people get to our parks and trails, right, without having to take their car, in some cases, to a trailhead where it will get broken into, right? And access to education, obviously, I know that's been an important focus for LTD historically. And even access to libraries, and in different communities in Lane County, that would look different, right? And then the thing I brought up, you know, access to grocery stores and other, and I would add in there access to medical care, with the, obviously, acutely aware of the closing of our only hospital in Eugene, and folks now really needing to rely on MX in particular to get out to Riverbend. So those are some very cursory thoughts that came to mind as I pondered this question.
That's great. Thank you.
Just to highlight one of those that Claire just mentioned, I completely agree with that list. And that one that I haven't seen and one that I was also thinking was access to athletic places and parks and trailheads as well. And that's one that really stuck out to me when I read through that, is something that I think would be very beneficial.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very community specific. We think about our very active community. It's great. Mike?
So we know from past experience that some of our residents consider a measure of accountability how full or empty the bus is. And we've been criticized for running buses that seem less full than they think they should be. I'm not sure quite how we address that, but that's one way in which we're held accountable by some members of the community.
Yeah. It's a good reminder and a helpful thing to reflect on, I think, for sure. There's a perception opportunity there, I think, in terms of the impact.
I think anyone else have other items to add? Claire, I appreciate you kind of kicking us off and having the list. I think some of the things that you spoke about data. So, and again, this is like, if we had a magic wand, how might we do this? Thinking about like service access and how maybe we can collaborate with the community, especially like, you know, our CBOs and other service providers for like understanding how folks access that. Like, did they take the bus there? And then I think about childcare also, like the opportunity for thinking about again, we're in a childcare desert. And also, how are we thinking about folks utilizing our system to be able to access that? So I just think about more collaborative opportunities. And I don't know how to capture that on a dashboard, but just thinking about ways that we can measure some of those pieces.
That's great.
I can fill you in a little bit about the CBOs. We're working with Peace Health right now to do a survey of everyone who's been involved with the discussion about what to do about service with the emergency room in Eugene closing. And we just launched that survey today. So we're hoping to get back as some information through Peace Health and through us. It will help us identify what the need actually is, because we're not sure we can identify the need, and then how it is we can address the need based on what it is. So hopefully we'll have some information back in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll get together as a group and begin to prescribe some things I think that will be helpful for everyone. So those are some things we're working on.
Thanks, Pat.
Sorry if I can just respond. Depending on how that survey is being set up, you will want to capture people who were not able to access medical care because they didn't have the option. So if Peace Health is just surveying who showed up in their emergency room, then you're missing part of the picture.
We're actually relying on the community organizations to send that out, because we can't do all of that.
Sure.
Those community-based organizations will survey their members and the folks that they work with. Okay. We're not, I agree with you. We're not going to look at these. We will miss everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Pat.
Yep.
And we'll just take a few more. I do want to be conscious of time. I think this is really great, important discussion. If there's appetite for it, we can certainly bring it back, as I think I'm thinking back to what Jameson asked, and what cuts through all of these is intersectionality. And that's another thing that we need to be really conscious of in the social impact domain. So that's another whole conversation to have.
Thanks, Amy. I think we have Marty on with his hand raised, and then we'll move on from there.
Sorry, I missed you guys in the beginning. I couldn't get over. Just one real quick question related to accountability. And this relates to it. And this, I don't know if this is necessarily a question or more of a statement. We're talking about accountability, but let's talk more about from the standpoint of empowerment. A lot of times we talk about people holding us accountable, but if they're not empowered or they don't know, how do they know to do it? So my question is, what's being done, or are you taking steps to make sure that people are empowered to do so? Because a lot of times, I just know from my consultant days, if I would not let people know that they're empowered to do something, they're not going to do it, right? And so just keep happening and keep snowballing and mushrooming down. They just keep getting worse and worse because nobody wants to cause a problem. You know, I took a EMX last weekend, and this gal was on the bus stop, and she told me she was waiting for an hour for an EMX. I'm like, is that normal? She's like, well, yeah, sometimes. Really? I wouldn't have been waiting an hour. That makes no sense. So
yeah, Marty, great point. I think there's a few things there. One is this is part of the transparency effort. So we have a public dashboard. We're holding ourselves accountable through measures. We want people to go and look at that and ask us questions. And what you just described, I always encourage people, submit a complaint, go to our website, tell us about that problem. My 13-year-old takes the bus every day, and he gives me all kinds of input, and I'm like, go to the website and submit a complaint, because that's the way something's going to happen about it.
That's what I told her to do that too.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, you kind of teed us up for the next agenda item, which is our community outreach and communications assessment. And they're
I knew it was coming. I was helping you out.
Thank you, Marty. Always helping out. They're going to talk to us about how do we engage our community. So
I just want to be, we have two folks, and then the two of you can kind of.
Please.
And thank you. And I'll be brief. When I read that article, the thing that stood out to me most, or the biggest, is customer experience or rider experience. I think that if we could nail that down to where the experience is bigger than what they expected, that's going to help us long term, long ways out. And then that's the thing that stood out for me in the article there.
Thanks, Vidal. That's great. And that kind of harps back to, we have we're on time 92% of the time, but people are saying 74% is the perception. Like, what's going on there? You know, so I think, yeah, that's very, very tuned in.
There are riders who don't have choices that They get on the bus and takes them as long as it takes to get where they want to go. Others have choices, and they typically, I'm a choice rider, will take the fastest way to get somewhere. Is there some metric in there that's sort of measuring sort of how long it takes? And when I say I'm a choice rider, I use bike share, because oftentimes it's faster than taking the bus for shorter trips.
Like, so there's two things I'm hearing. Who are choice riders versus not? And then also for choice riders, how long is the route? Their best route?
Let me be a little bit more specific. I mean, you know, if it takes, and I don't know how you do this sort of system wide, but you know, sort of a trip from, you know, South Eugene to Peace Health, for example, if that takes an hour and 15 minutes, that's a long time. How does that compare to other ways to get there?
Yeah.
Is there sort of system wide of sort of how competitive is fixed route service compared to other ways to get around on average?
Yeah.
You know, we don't expect it to be, you know, as fast as driving in most cases, but is it 10% longer than driving? Is it, you know, 50% longer than driving? Is there some sort of measure there?
We do measure that, I think, and producing it in a way that we're holding ourselves accountable to it is an opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you all taking that prompt that we brought up, and we're going to go ahead and get us moving to the next topic. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Tom, and we're the team talking about community outreach and communications assessment.
Yes, thank you. First of all, let me say I've scoped a lot of planning projects over my 37 years here in this region, but I have to say this is one of the more unique projects that we've had an opportunity to think about, you know, how are we doing it? Why are we doing it? And one of the things is we realized that before we can connect our community, which is our mission, we need to connect with our community. And tonight I have Emma and Joshua with InfraStrategies here who have been working with us over the past several months, helping convene a committee, a community steering committee that really provided some valuable input to creating a communications framework that we can use, not just in this current effort to reimagine the ride, but actually make it consistent across all the communications and touch points that we have with the community. So with that, I'm going to ask Joshua and Emma to. Oh, and tonight, with the community, I should say, thank you, Pat. Tonight, what we're looking for is some feedback on the draft communications framework. This is something we're going to be taking to the board next month. And so we want to kind of take this opportunity tonight to really get your opinions and thoughts about how we can make it better.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And hello, everyone. I just want to do a quick time check, make sure I know how much time we have to do this because I want to use the time effectively. So how much time do we have?
We do have about, I'm sorry, I want to make sure this, Tom, we have a couple items for you with the board retreat, the grant update, and moving ahead. How much time do you need for those?
This is 20 minutes, I believe.
20 minutes? Okay, great. All right, well, hello, everyone. Joshua Shank with InfraStrategies. We were brought on to help LTD as they conducted this community outreach and communications assessment. And I'm going to go through what we've done so far and where we've come and how we've developed what we hope will be a framework for future engagement with the community going forward. So just to remind everyone what this is, we've talked about this before, and I know that this has been something we've been thinking about a lot. This is an assessment to figure out how LTD can better engage with the community. The idea is that in order to be successful in engaging with the community and deal with some of the challenges that LTD has had in the past, it was necessary to do a reset and to start over and think, okay, what is community outreach going to look like going forward? And that product, which is the product of this effort, is the community outreach framework. The idea is that this framework will be the guide for how staff and consultants will work with the public on projects and future LTD initiatives. And notice it's about working with the public. That is language that you'll see reflected in the framework itself, that this type of engagement is intended to be wholly collaborative. Next slide. So this was the process we used to develop this framework. We began by looking into best practices in this area. How do successful public agencies engage well with their community and collaborate collectively? We conducted a number of background interviews with people in the region who've been through some of the challenges and opportunities that LTD has had over the years, including, I believe, some people on this committee. We conducted those interviews, and also while looking at some of the documents that have come out of LTD at the same time. So really understanding the historical documents, but getting the context along with that based on those interviews. We looked at the results of a public survey that we conducted. That survey gave us some good information about how the public would like to be engaged. We also brought together this community steering council, which I'll talk more about. That council was the root of much of the development of this framework. And then we, of course, had feedback from LTD staff. And then most recently, we conducted a roundtable discussion with community-based organizations to get their feedback on the framework and on the draft framework. And now here we are with you. So the community outreach framework is composed of guiding principles, which you can see alongside. Those principles are the overarching component of the framework. And then the framework discusses the purpose and use of the framework, some of the stakeholders in the region that we've identified and their varying needs. And then the real meat of it is, what are the strategies and tactics that LTD will use for engagement going forward? So just to go over some of these efforts, the public survey results, when we were asking people about how they give feedback or how they'd like to give feedback, most were not aware of LTD projects, and we surveyed the community pretty fairly. That's an interesting finding. Most also did not know how to give feedback and or did not think that their feedback would make a difference. So that was kind of the starting point, is that the awareness of LTD is not as high, the projects is not as high as it could be, and people don't know how to give feedback. As far as how people prefer to be engaged, people do tend to prefer short or easy surveys, virtual online meetings, flyers and mailers, as far as ways to get input on a critical issue. As far as staying up to date, social media was popular, along with email newsletters and push notifications, and even messaging at stations. We asked people how they wanted to stay involved throughout a project, and they said that they would like to receive frequent and consistent updates on progress. And then finally, in terms of participating in events, there was a request for more virtual and online events, but also meetings and events on weekends when people are better able to participate. So as far as the interview findings, we conducted these interviews in person over a series of a few days in the LTD offices. We got the sense that stakeholders believe that LTD needs to first focus on developing and communicating the problems they're trying to fix before they propose solutions. And this was a consistent finding that guided a lot of what we did. People did not want to be presented with a solution to a problem. They wanted to be presented with the problem and discuss potential solutions, and that's a big difference. There's also a desire for the board to play a larger role in community engagement, which was interesting. People felt like they didn't know much about the board and their role in community engagement, and that the unique structure of the board at LTD made community engagement less of a natural thing than you might see at other agencies where, for example, board members are often elected officials from the very communities that they represent. They're more likely to be playing that role. In this case, there's a desire for them to play a greater role. We also found that the business community believes they should have a bigger say in the decisions of transit planning. However, the financial return of businesses cannot be the only way that we measure whether success is happening in the region. So that's an interesting kind of balance that you have to strike in community engagement. And then finally, we found that there's an opportunity for LTD to employ boosters and utilize supporters who really want LTD to do better and to help advance their priorities, but don't feel like they've been engaged sufficiently to do that. And that's a great place for LTD to engage and get more support by finding those allies and working with them. So the next phase, as I discussed, was we put together this ad hoc community steering council. And this was a unique strategy that was cooked up as a way of making sure that we weren't going to come up with a framework for engaging the community without engaging the community about what that framework looked like. And it makes total sense. You want to make sure that the framework itself is developed with the community based on the kind of guidelines and principles that we'd seen from our research. So we did that. We set up this community steering council. We invited members to apply, people from the public to apply, and then curated a group of 20 people, about more than 20 people, that we felt was as representative as possible of the community, was as diverse as we could make it, and accurately representative. We made sure that we had representatives of very different components of the community in that group. Another best practice we followed there, though, was also to provide stipends to members of the Community Steering Council based on their attendance. That's a best practice because it encourages participation and it makes people feel like their time is being valued, and they're much more likely to participate actively and helpfully when you do that. We had 6 meetings that we held every 2 weeks from September to December, and Emma and I were up in the region for all those meetings, facilitating discussions and really listening to what the council had to say. So these are kind of the big questions that we put to the council in order to get their input. We started off asking about their transportation and mobility priorities because, after all, LTD is a transportation and mobility organization. And so we wanted to hear what people's pain points were, what they were thinking about as far as those priorities. But then we got quickly into what are the principles that we want to set for community engagement. We asked people about the stakeholders and their varying needs. We discussed the strategies and tactics that we might use given those stakeholders. And then we forced the people on the committee to prioritize the trade-offs for engagement, because LTD can't do everything everywhere all at once. It has to prioritize how it's going to use strategies and tactics, how it's going to prioritize stakeholders, how it's going to prioritize those principles. So we did focus on priorities at the end. All of these inputs went into the framework. We used various exercises, working groups, and discussion formats to get inputs on all these topics. So what we found, these are the principles that are in the framework, in the draft framework for community engagement. The principles are around style, content, process, and intent. As far as style, there's the principle of a two-way dialogue, meaning that this is not just LTD giving out information or LTD just receiving information. It's both, and it's happening at the same time so that it is a two-way feedback. That it's accessible, that people can get to it and be a part of it, and that in fact LTD makes an effort to ensure accessibility for everyone in the community. That it is a respectful dialogue by both sides, that LTD respects the community's perspective and vice versa, and that there's active listening as a style of engagement, that people are really trying to hear what each other has to say, not just trying to speak past each other or demonstrate how loud their voice can be. As far as content, the idea here is that the content should be data-driven. That was a principle that people emphasized on the council, that it should be clear what the content's purpose is. Why are people being told what they're being told, or why is this the content that's being discussed? That there should be fiscal transparency was a critical issue. Even if that news isn't good news, people want to know what the fiscal situation is so they can make or provide good input for making good decisions collaboratively. And that the content should be outcome oriented. Rather than focus on what's happened in the past, what exactly is happening now, where do we want to get to, was being the principle for how that content is provided. And then as far as process, I already talked about the two-way dialogue. The other side of that is the feedback loop, so that when LTD hears something, it's not just that they hear it, it's that they report back on how they've used that feedback in what they've done. Whether they've used it or not, they're not going to use it. They should tell why it's not been used, but that loop is continuous, so everyone knows, has trust that what they're saying is actually being heard and used. That there's benchmarking and continuous improvement, so that this is not just a process that is set in stone, but that we're looking at how are we doing and what can we do to improve it all the time. And that it's adaptable to changing circumstances, because circumstances will certainly change in the community and at LTD, and so the process should change with that. And then finally, the principle of intent, that the goal of public engagement is that it should be meaningful engagement. This is not a box checking exercise. This is intended to be meaningful for both sides. LTD gets something out of it, the community gets something out of it. And then that there's a community first mentality, in the sense that the LTD is out there to serve the community. That's their job, and that is the intent with which they should conduct public engagement. So we asked the CSC to talk about some of the stakeholders and their varying needs. This is just kind of a sample of some of the stakeholders they put out there as priorities that we should discuss. Nothing all that surprising on here, but I would point out that people like, as a list just based on your previous discussion, people like the housing insecure were called out as a clear stakeholder. Differently abled individuals, certainly transit users, communities of color, labor groups, a lot of critical groups that LTD needs to make an effort to reach. And then there's other groups that are potential allies, including the University of Oregon, including employers, certainly tourism and economic development. So there are different stakeholders that have a vested interest in LTD, and it's LTD's responsibility to figure out what are their varying needs, and therefore how do they engage those stakeholders differently? How do they prioritize that engagement? And so then getting to the proposed strategies and tactics that we developed with the CSC. Number one, not surprising based on what you've heard so far, the key thing is to work to build trust with the community, and not just when there is a project, but at all times. The relationship has to be solid, so that when some big change is being proposed or when some big project is coming up, the community trusts that LTD is not just showing up now because they have a project on tap, but they actually care that they have a relationship, and that relationship continues regardless of whether there's a project. Second, partnering with the existing organizations to build trust. LTD can't do this on its own. There are lots of organizations out there that have better relationships or existing relationships with communities. Use those organizations to help build that trust and put LTD in a position to better interact with the community. Focusing on existing riders and meeting them where they are and working to improve their experience. This is an interesting and important strategy, because LTD is not largely funded by the riders. They are funded largely by the business community. But there was a strong feeling by the CSC that focusing on the riders was very important, and that meeting them where they are, really finding those riders and working to improve their experience, needed to be a major component of community engagement. The CSC also suggested anticipating potential opposition and engaging that opposition early as a key tactic. That's something that many public agencies do when they see that there could be strong opposition to something that needs to happen. It's really important to bring those folks into the fold early. As I discussed earlier, following up after interactions to make sure that people understand how feedback is being incorporated, even if it's not being incorporated, just to make sure they understand why it's not being incorporated. Being transparent about that is really important. And similarly, being transparent about the hard truths and not shying away from those, being honest. That's how trust gets built, is by sharing those hard truths and understanding what the real challenges are and working together to solve them. And that's what the last one is about too. Being upfront about boundaries and limitations, not just about LTDs, but also what the public has to deal with. there are real boundaries and limitations, and engagement has to recognize those so that LTD can work collaboratively with the community within those boundaries and limitations. And then this pyramid really helps to explain how this works, the vision for what we're hoping can be accomplished here. With trust as the foundation of this pyramid, that's where you really you have to build that trust. That has to be the basis for engagement going forward. And then with that trust built, you can clearly communicate what people need to hear. You can engage in collaborative and honest conversations. And all of this should be with a focus on the riders, the end users of the system. If these strategies are used in this way, and this effective way, then this will be a way to engage the community much more positively and hopefully result in better outcomes as a result. And then finally, we did ask the CSC to prioritize strategies and tactics, and these are the 4 that they really thought were most critical. If you really drill down a little bit, 1, engaging government stakeholders. It's going to be very difficult for LTD to be successful in this community without working with other government stakeholders on their issues that they care about, and also on the issues that their communities care about. So engaging with government stakeholders was a key tactic. Getting out ahead of the story, so putting out what LTD's version is of the story when they're engaging, when they're working on a controversial topic is really important. It's very natural for the press to characterize stories that are focused on negative stories, and getting out there and making sure that the other side of that story is told is really important. Being present with riders, whether it's on the system, whether it's through surveys, whether it's at the stations, being there and being a part of it. Riding the service should be something that LTD does, that its board members do, that its executives do, that everybody does, and being out there and being a part of it, that will go a long way towards far better engagement and understanding of each other's positions. And then finally, engaging the potential opposition, working with the people who might present a challenge, bringing them in, not treating them as a potential enemy, but instead, how can they be brought in as allies and partners in achieving the larger goals that people care about. So that's the basics of the framework, and I'd love to hear your feedback and comments on just to make sure we understand where we are. We've now finalized the draft framework, and we're in the public review period. As soon as this, after this meeting, it's going to start the public review period. When the public review period is concluded, we will incorporate any final comments, including ones we hear today, and present that to the LTD board in late April. So we have come a long way. We've got a lot of great work that's been done. I hope that a lot of this resonates with you, and we'd love to hear any questions or thoughts on what you've heard today.
Go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great presentation. So this is Claire Syrett, and I'm just going to put it out there in case you're not aware. I was a Eugene City Councilor for 10 years, and I was removed from office by a recall that was inspired by the fact that LTD and the City of Eugene made a decision to pursue the idea of bus rapid transit on River Road, which is a major corridor in the ward that I represented. So I just want that to be out there on the record for everyone. I think this is an impressive plan. I am impressed with the results from the committee that you put together. I think they've hit some really key points. I especially like the draft principles and the 4 key strategy tactics. I'm gonna say one thing and then make a kind of personal comment. So I think it is important to engage potential opposition. I think one of the principles outlined was respectful dialogue. I think that you may find that some members of the opposition may not be willing to engage in good faith or in a respectful manner. That was my experience. And then I just want to push back on this talking point that this transit district is somehow more beholden to businesses because that is how we have chosen to fund this district. I think that is a false framework. The businesses that are funding this transit district are frequented by and are used by the residents of this community, and the cost of that funding tax is passed on, I would assume, to consumers and folks who use the services of businesses. So this is a transit district that I believe public transit benefits our entire community and is owned by our entire community. And I just want to make that emphatic statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. If Emma or Josh want to respond to that, if not, then we have Marty next. Marty, assuming you're raising your hand for this particular.
Damn.
Okay.
So I thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question just from my old days of marketing back in the days of TV news and broadcast. Remember those days they had like regular stations, not cable? And I worked in the marketing department. We used to have focus groups where we would go out and we would, you know, find out what they wanted to watch, what kind of stories they wanted to hear, that sort of things. But what we would always do with all the different departments, we would always have a liaison from different departments so we could bridge the information. What I'm concerned about is I see all these different pockets of groups. How are we bridging all of that? Because I just see, to me, this would, I mean, this is great, but to me, this would be a marketing nightmare, how to bring all this together, because there's just there's a lot of different groups. So how are you bridging all that?
I think the idea is that, yeah, you can't do everything. I mean, it's overwhelming, right? And what we started with the CSC was, let's talk about what we would try to do in an ideal world, and then let's focus and prioritize that based on the limited resources that obviously we are all constrained by. So I think the plan tries to recognize that. That's part of why we did that prioritization exercise at the end, was say, okay, what do we really have to focus on? But we didn't want to then eliminate the other stuff from the plan. We still wanted to have it in there so that the discussions of the CSC could be in the plan. But you're absolutely right. There has to be prioritization. There are limited resources, and you can't do everything. We hope that comes through in the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I was just gonna go ahead and hand the mic over to Tom. Tom, do you want to go ahead and respond to that, and then
I just want to try and address Marty's question a little bit, and part of it comes from kind of how we entered into this was the realization that you know, I mostly engage the community through different projects that we do, and it's like, you know, the community's out there. Oh, we're doing a project. Hey, here I am. We could, you know, close it, and we have other processes in the organization, passing the budget, you know, all those kinds of things that are public. And what we're taking away from this is our relationship with the community needs to be ongoing and continuous. And we're going to meet new people, and over time, you know, those people are going to be different people, and we just have to have that orientation of engaging with the full community on an ongoing basis, because we're the transit provider and we want to make sure everybody has what they need, and that, you know, we're getting what we need to do the best we can. So it's to me, that's how I am taking that as it's a really different orientation.
Thank you, Tom. Vidal.
Thank you. One question I have, and it kind of just raised my eyebrow. One of the strategies or tactics in terms of prioritization that you mentioned was to be present with riders. And I want to get a sense of, because obviously you had about 20 folks in the room of all different backgrounds and so forth, kind of coming up with this and kind of talking through it. Do they feel as if LTD is a bit distant from the riders themselves? I'm just trying to get a better sense of what you were looking at or what you were talking about in terms of be present with riders? Do riders feel distance from LTD, or is LTD distance themselves from riders? I mean, could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I don't know that we heard that there's a feeling of distance. It was more that successful engagement requires that LTD be around riders and be riders themselves, right? And so if you're gonna really like what people didn't want, and I didn't hear necessarily that this is what had happened in the past, but what they didn't want is they didn't want people from LTD coming and telling them how their rider experience could be improved or what they needed as riders if they weren't riders themselves, if they weren't part of the system. And the same thing I think applies to the board as well. Like there was a feeling among the CSC that the board should be present on the system and should understand what it's like to use transit in the region if they're going to be part of trying to solve the challenges of the riders. So I think that was the sentiment that was expressed and that we tried to capture.
Okay, thank you for that. So what you're saying is the community is experiencing something LTD should be experiencing, plus the board members be experiencing that exact same thing. Okay, thank you.
Do you have any, Rob, go ahead.
Just some brief comments. Thank you for the presentation for this work. This sounds like best practices in the industry and good principles for how to engage the community. So thank you for that. I'm going to anticipate that the board will adopt this framework as presented or slightly tweaked. I guess I'm curious what comes next after that, because it's a set of principles and not necessarily answers for tonight, but I guess the proof is in the pudding. So I'm wondering, how does LTD actually engage these principles to do things differently along River Road around moving ahead? We have some ongoing conversations that have been hard with the community. So I'll be interested to see how this plays out differently than it has in the past. Thank you.
I can answer that, Rob. You know, I think the key thing with what will be adopted is that whatever that looks like from the board is that we have to operationalize it. We have to be intentional about it, and we have to use that document and apply it to the projects that we're working on. And that's going to be our responsibility internally to do, and we expect to be held accountable for our work on that. Is it going to look the same on every project? Probably not, but it has to look pretty close. So that's I think the exciting part of the work. It was great to work with the CSC and be involved in all of this to date, but the exciting part is ahead, and that is how it is we flip the script on this thing in terms of our community engagement and our community participation. And it's not a one and done with every project. It has to be an ongoing thing that the district is engaged in on everything we do. And I think that, like I said, that's where I think as you said, the proof is in the pudding. And I think that's the exciting, delicious part of the pudding. So anyway.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate your excitement.
I see Jameson has his hand up. Go ahead, Jameson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. I hate failing. I was afraid I was going to fail twice in one night. So, back to Rob's question and echoing Pat, I think, the baseline of this process, of this framework is trust, building trust. That was at the very bottom of the pyramid. And for us to build trust, we have to deliver on what we're selling, right? So that's what we're going to do as an organization. Once we take this to the board and however it gets approved in what form, we have to be consistent in how we deliver, and it has to be scalable to the project. And the beautiful thing about Eugene, I was talking about this today, where I'm at in the conference, is that we have an engaged community. That's the beautiful thing. The other side of it is that we have an engaged community, right? That's the other side as well. So there's a lot of perspectives and a lot of opinions and a lot of ways that people carry out business that we have to be prepared as the organization to be able to make sure we deliver on our end, and make sure on our end that we're communicating as best we can, that we're engaging, and that we're really soliciting the feedback that we need. The other side of it is, Rob, is that we're not disengaging the CSC. We're not disengaging that council. We want to have a feedback loop on how are we doing, because this is another iterative process, right? It's not fully baked and done. It's an ongoing conversation, an ongoing process. So as we learn how to better communicate with our community, we'll adapt and modify and go from there. But keeping that council in place and that feedback loop in place is vital to us moving forward.
Thank you, Jameson.
Thanks. Any other questions or responses from the team? All right. Thank you, Joshua and Emma. I really appreciate this. We, in my organization, have been doing some listening sessions in the community, and it is affirming to hear very similar outcomes. And as I think, especially as Jameson mentioned, we have an engaged community, which is wonderful and also very informing of the work that we're doing. So yes, thank you all for this work. All right.
Thanks. Right, bye.
Tom? Do you have any other items on the agenda? Sorry.
Yes.
Rolling into our next, the annual board retreat update.
Yes, so, and I will be brief here, though. It was a fantastic retreat, in my opinion, having attended a few over the years. That's starting to be a theme. But anyway, the board met. It was what was really, I'll just say, in all the conversation you've heard tonight about community engagement and kind of measuring what we do and doing what we say we're going to do. That was on the table. We were talking about kind of how can we as an organization connect effectively with the goals of the community. We had a great conversation with community members. I included in the packet, I'm not going to go through all kind of 100 slides or whatever that was in there, but that was some of the essential content, if you will, to the conversation. Again, we had Joshua Shank, we had Karina Ricks, those two people. So Joshua's doing the COCA project. He also comes from LA Metro, and they did a lot of piloting. They kind of started a piloting program while he was there. And so kind of learning about that and how the right ways to do that. And then Karina used to work for FTA, worked for the city of Pittsburgh in terms of overseeing transit and mobility, brings a great perspective around mobility management, and really happy that she's managing our mobility management framework, which we'll be coming back to you with here soon. And so it's set up. Those are all good setups. I would encourage you, if you're interested in this kind of thing, Henry Fields, the local economist with the state, gave a great presentation on the status of Lane County's economy and some of the important features there. Again, I'm not going to go into the details there, but it was a really, I think, a well conceived process. Throughout the day, and I'll let board members talk about it if they want, but from beginning to end, I think it was just a really well choreographed, and the right people were at the room at the right time, and talking about, we got some really good ideas coming from our community stakeholders who were there, talking about how we can maybe look at how do we drive transit ridership today. There's a woman that was talking about, she learned how to ride transit, her son needs to learn how to ride. So there's this realization that that's a critical aspect, and then how transit can contribute to economic development. People understood that. Just a really great conversation. Set a lot of expectations, I think, as well, in terms of how we move forward. And again, we'll be coming back with more of that process of reimagining the ride and how we can build on and leverage kind of what we learned from that retreat. So I was excited. I don't know, I asked the board members to chime in.
Any board members want to have any share their excitement that Tom has shared with us as well?
Yeah, actually, everything Tom said correct, and I was actually very appreciative of the people who showed up that were from the community at large, and again, gave a chance for the board to really kind of think about the big picture of LTD, not, we come and do the the policy things month to month, but they're looking at where's this whole organization going and what's our role, and what's our aspirational view of things. I thought it went really well, and also gave us a chance to kind of come together as a board, because sometimes you don't get to spend a lot of time with your other board members really getting to know them, and I thought that was a good chance. Gino, do you have any thoughts?
I agree with everything that's been said. The one interesting thing I find is, and the challenge we have, and we can do it, is there was a lot of leadership that was presented during that retreat, is balancing leadership and the community input part. I think we need to be careful as we're doing some of those big things that we're hoping to do, that we don't forget about what we just talked about in terms of community involvement and finding that balance. That's an essential ingredient, right? Yeah.
Anything else from anyone? It
Yeah.
sounds like we're looking at a North Star and how everyone's going to help us get to that and bringing the community together on our LTD, moving ahead toward our North Star with our community. So it's pretty exciting to hear that.
Yeah, and we'll be bringing things back periodically. And again, the retreat was really good. We ended up with board members each articulating a future headline, which is a fun exercise. And hopefully we can see those headlines in the future.
Rob?
Just briefly, Tom, maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear you talk about bags, big, hairy, audacious goals. I was a little disappointed about that.
Yes. BHAGs. BHAGs. Yeah, that was a term Karina used to really encourage the assembled group, not just the board, but the community members as well, to think big, that we really need to have these big, hairy, audacious goals that can really drive us and keep us going over time, not just, in the next year or next 2 years. I don't know how they fit into the strategic business plan, but
yeah, for the next topic, it's a step towards a big, hairy, audacious goal, for sure.
Good question.
Sounds like a segue. Which, Tom, you have the next two. You have all the segues until the end.
Actually, I'm gonna phone a friend. Pat's doing the last item. You can sit here. Just really quickly, I was just going to take a few minutes. We applied for an Attain grant, actually drawing on Karina Ricks and her team to help pull this application together. It's federal funding under what they're calling the Attain grant, which is Advanced Transportation Technology and Innovation Program. And as just to really quickly describe what our application is, we are looking to, so I should say a little bit, the grant is looking for innovations in technologies around transportation in a broader sense. So this is a program actually administered by the Federal Highway Administration, but transit's eligible to apply, looking for technological advances in kind of how we can drive ridership and all. And so what this would do is pilot a program looking at technology. There's if you're familiar with the firm VIA is a provider. They actually help facilitate our mobility on demand service in Cottage Grove, but they're a technology provider, and so they have technologies that give us as planners information about how to look at things, and then also technologies that kind of push information out to the community. And the idea is, and maybe you've used things like Transit app and UMO has some information about our services, but what this is looking at is a multimodal way of things. And so part of this is to kind of test this technology. We're going to stand up a pilot mobility on demand service. We've been working with the Bethel School District and are proposing to pilot this technology in the Bethel area, initially geared towards the students at Willamette High School. And just basically trying to test this technology, which would be something like, someone would need to get someplace and they can look at the service. And this is kind of future looking because it doesn't exist in Bethel today, but, suppose there's an active bike share program within the Bethel area. We have really good service within the Bethel area. And this could be something where basically the app shows them that, well, maybe you're late to school today, so you need to get there. So you can, there's a couple of things. You can walk to a certain place, get picked up, and taken to school by the mod service. It's a relatively short distance. Or let's say you need to go to work. So again, you could catch the mod to the nearest bus stop, and you could take the bus to work. So it's intended to provide that kind of technology to users. We're looking at, to the extent that this is something that's successful, we can look at enhancing what we're doing down in Cottage Grove, for example. But also, we're starting to look in the metro area. Where might these services make sense in terms of helping people either get that next better connection to transit, but also, beyond whether it connects to our service or not, are they getting the accessibility that they need? And that's what we're going to be looking for.
Is it some sort of route planning type app?
Well, it's on inward, it's giving us kind of a multimodal perspective, and we can start as planners to see maybe we need to change the certain routing of our bus and it would better align with a mobility on demand service or something like that. And again, externally, it's going to give you, the user, a sense of kind of where the nearest forms of mobility are and how you can access those.
I'm gonna jump in. As I said, it's a big, hairy, audacious goal. So if we think about the outcome
we're seeking to achieve in an ideal state, I'm a transit user. I'm a person that requires mobility in the community. To your point, I want to get to where I can go as fast as possible. So we can use an innovative technological solution to help me as a user of mobility connect a mobility, chain. I can take a bus, I can ride a scooter, I can get off the bus and take another scooter and then maybe, I don't know, swim somewhere. That's probably not what I'm going to do. That's not included, but that's the big, hairy, audacious goal, is that I can, in the most efficient way possible that meets my needs. I'm an active person. I want to be fit and I want to use public transit. We have a solution for that. That's the audacious goal. We don't have a solution for that, for the record. We don't have that solution yet, but that's the audacious goal that we have.
Great. Any other questions?
So we applied or are applying for the grant? Sorry, I just want to make sure I didn't get
We
applied and then.
Waiting to hear.
Perfect.
It's, from what I can tell from what Karina told me, we're in the second year of a 3-year program, so we should hear, it could be anytime within the next few months as to whether we got it or not. I will add one thing, just not to be outdone by the ATTAIN acronym that the feds have. Our project is called the Regional Mobility Enabling Service Hub, or Regional Mesh. So there you have it. Ouch.
Sorry.
Thanks, Tom. And now we have the moving ahead update.
Yeah, what I want to talk with you tonight about is our status with MX on River Road specifically. And what I want to do is share some information with you in a direction we think we're headed, and that we'll bring to the board, and then open it up to some question and answer and some discussion. As most of you know, about a year or more, LTD and the city of Eugene pushed pause on MX on River Road. And during that time, what we did is we went back and we evaluated the situation, and we said, what does the community need us to solve on that corridor? We assessed what our approach was to the community during that period of time. And then we had to look at ourselves as a mobility manager and really figure out how we were aligning with community outcomes and connecting to other modes of transportation, and then if there were any pilot opportunities there, and we think there will be. But in terms of what it was we wanted to solve, we got into the finances of that project, which have gone up almost 40% since 2016 when we started on MX and moving as part of the Moving Ahead project. We also have seen a drastic dip in ridership. That's through the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, we had about 10 million boardings a year. Now we're at about 6 million, maybe a little bit more than that. Well, we expect to have more by the end of the fiscal year, but that's where we are. So as we were looking at that and we were listening to the community in terms of what we were trying to solve out on River Road, we came to the conclusion that probably right now MX on River Road is not the best option for us. But there's a couple of things that we're very committed to. One is we want to make sure that we're able to provide a good service along that route. Right now, we provide 15-minute service. We want to speed that service up as we get more bus operators in so that we can get to 10 minutes and really be able to serve that area. We also are going to support the city of Eugene with all of the safety measures that they want to take out on River Road to make that entire corridor safer for pedestrians, people who ride bikes, for motor vehicles, and also for buses. As we move forward with this project to support the city of Eugene on this, we want to make sure that we're engaging the community. So I think this is going to be a good opportunity for us to roll out what Joshua and Emma just talked to us about with the COCA, and be able to get to the point where they are. But like I said, I really want to underscore the fact that we're about safety out there. We're about pedestrians. As we talk about being a mobility manager, we can't only be concerned about buses, but we have to be concerned about sidewalks, how people get to our buses, how they get to stores and other locations. The same thing with bicycles. So one of the things that they've talked about out there is to have designated bicycle lanes, and certainly we want to be supportive of how best to integrate all those modes of transportation to support transit in any form. We intend to probably bring this to the board. I think it's next month, Tom, to get a firm to make a recommendation and also to get their support for the long haul permanently push pause on MX on River Road. So if you've got any questions, I mean, I'm game to answer them on that right now.
Mike, online?
So, Pat, we know that MX is a range of elements. It's not a single thing or it's this or that. There's this range of elements that compose MX or BRT.
Correct.
And I'm wondering if there are other elements. You talked about 10-minute frequency, but I wonder if there are other elements of MX that can easily be incorporated. Obviously, you're not going to be putting in dedicated lanes, but maybe more spacing between stops or other things like that. Are some of those things possible?
Yeah, Mike, I think they're all possible, and they're all things that I know that Tom's team and others are taking a look at. You're right, Bus Rapid Transit is not just our green buses. There's other elements to it, and certainly we want to provide that corridor the service that it deserves and that it needs. And I think through some of the things you're talking about, we can probably get to that point here over some time.
If I can add to Mike, one of the things that the Moving Ahead process, which has been 8 or 9 years, in the making, has done is actually created a closer partnership between the city and LTD with respect to if you're familiar with the corridor, you know that they've been actively trying to make it work better for pedestrians and bikes, and implementing safety improvements at various points along the corridor. And they're starting to look on various corridors at where they can also help transit, because they understand transit's important. So on River Road, they're also looking at ways in which we might be able to do that. But it's not the corridor level huge investment. It's really looking at and prioritizing kind of where can we make progress now.
Thanks.
Rob?
couple comments. Thank you for the update, Pat. 5 years ago, just before the pandemic, there was a public hearing, the last public hearing on moving ahead. And at that time, Best and our partners concluded that MX was probably not the most appropriate choice for River Road. And so it's good to see sort of catching up to that view. It's appropriate in some places. We didn't see the ridership. We didn't see the density there. The cost sort of didn't pan out. But we did support Enhanced Corridor and Enhanced Corridor Plus. I want to emphasize that there is a need for better transit of some sort along River Road, and look forward to having conversations around that. The other thing I'll say, and we'll follow up, is that Best has been doing outreach along River Road, asking, I think, some of the same questions you and the city of Eugene have been asking. And we'll follow up with you and share information around that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Heather, you have your hand up? Or Marty, sorry.
Oh, okay, I could be Heather too, I guess.
Sorry, I can't see from down here.
This is more of a personal. This is more of a personal question from writing. The clocks came down on at the stops of EMX. Why was that?
The clocks on the real-time signs.
On the real-time signs. Vandalism is
really
part of that.
Okay.
And also the technology part of it. We are lagging behind in terms of having the parts and some of that to maintain those. We've had a significant amount of vandalism with those signs and other things that for us to replace those every time somebody takes a baseball bat to it, is $9,000 or $10,000 just in equipment. So that's been the reason why.
I remember I used to DJ. That's why I don't carry lights when I DJ. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So given the statement I made earlier, obviously this could seem like a kind of personal switch to me, and Jameson did do me the courtesy of reaching out to me prior to this meeting, so I wasn't caught by surprise. And, I'm no longer an elected representative, but when I was, I recognized, and I even told some of the folks who were so upset, like, the future might change, right? Like the shovels hadn't hit the dirt. And there was a lot that could have happened between the vote that the city of Eugene and LTD took around those decisions to lead to a different outcome. And so, I think it's eminently reasonable and proper that the agency and the city of Eugene should make this reconsideration, given the fact that you all have access to, and to prioritize the needs for safer transit along that corridor for everyone, and do that within a way that's fiscally responsible and, makes sense for the agency and the city. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Anything else from anyone?
How
Oh,
about
wow, yes,
jump
sorry.
in one
Thank
more
you. We
time?
have Mike raising his hand.
Sort of to follow up on Claire's comment, every LTD project is an iterative process, and LTD has always said we will not take the next step until we're convinced that we should take the next step, and we may be convinced that we shouldn't. And a lot of times LTD will get pushback saying, you've already got your minds made up, you're going to go ahead no matter what. And this is a good example of where LTD did exactly what they said they would do. They're involved in an iterative process, taking the next step only if it makes sense to take the next step, reevaluating along the way. So I think this is a commendable direction for the agency and for the community. And I really like the fact that Tom pointed out that through that iterative process, the city and LTD have become more intertwined in their goals to find a way to better work together to serve the public.
Proof of performance. I'm going to say it again.
or the kids that ride the 51 or 52 are able to run the company when they're ready, because we're providing that access in ways that they need to use. You know, where Tom talked about the Attain grant, you know, that takes, you know, staff time and matching dollars. You know, we're looking at how do we serve Coburg better? How do we serve our southern portion of Lane County better? And they're all different solutions. You know, we got an email recently about the housing project, and we hear about, you know, workforce housing, the need for that. We got an email, you know, over the last 2 days about a housing project coming in the Springfield community. And their primary concern is how do we connect transit to this to make it successful? So I think, you know, looking at the priorities around the region and how they are translated in the work that we do is critical. That's the BHAG, Rob. The BHAG is really turning Lane County into the mobility management system that can be emulated across the country. There are more Lane counties than there are Chicago's, New York's, or Philadelphia's. And we can create a model here, harnessing the community college, University of Oregon, the engineers at Oregon State. Let's create the next wave of people who are going to rethink the mobility structure and how to support the mobility system. Let's rethink how we connect people to access to jobs and how we play a part in the priorities. This entire meeting is woven through one thread from the board retreat to the communications assessment to what we're talking about right now in developing that BHAG. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I want to reframe this differently, Claire, in that moving ahead is going to catapult us into understanding what the real potential of our community can actually be and how we realize that with the community. And I'm glad that my speakers or my microphone is working now, because I was bouncing in my seat to say this, but now I'll be quiet and turn it back over to the chair, because I think Gino may be looking at me like I'm crazy right now.
Thank you so much, Jameson. I really appreciate that. And again, I think that's a really why we're all here. And I'm really excited when we talk about intersectionality with our communication, all of the work that we're doing. I feel like we are being able to embrace that nimbleness that we need to have, because we might have a plan and then you hear from the community. That's kind of that double edge, the side of the coin where you're thinking about engagement. That makes it a little bit more complex, but it makes it more rich because it really includes our community. So just very excited for the direction that we're going in. I do want to, there's a couple more things that are technically not on the agenda, but I do, one of the things I want to make sure that our team takes, there are some cards over here that are recruitment cards. So please grab some. They're both in English and in Spanish. So please let's get these out to the community. That's one of the things that our team can do. Grab some of those cards so that we can hand them out. Also, the link that takes you to the job page also has the link for recruitment for this committee. Please make sure I'm correct when I say that, because that's where I found all the information. So we are currently recruiting folks for this committee, the Strategic Planning Committee. So folks that are online or listening in, you know, I know you're all out there listening to this pre-recorded message. Please go to the website if you're interested in getting involved in this committee. Fill out the application and also share it with your friends to make sure that they're getting involved and that they're also being able to recruit, because I see all of the buses with we're hiring, and let's make sure we get the message out as much as we can and as far as we can in our community. Also, our Tom mentioned 37 years here at LTD. I'm making sure that's not just on this committee specifically.
I was at LCOG for 20 years, 17 years at LTD.
Okay, all combined here in our community. And we have a retirement coming up. And so we just, we need to figure out who else on this committee is going to have the ties, because we need to have that energy, that tie energy. So thank you so much, Tom, for your service. And I really appreciate the time that you've given me being the chair, and Marty as well on this committee and others. So I just really appreciate that. And thank you so much for your service.
Well, if I can say, I've enjoyed every moment. Well, most of the moments, you know.
That was another life.
You get one more committee, so.
That's right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for everything. Appreciate it. Anything else for the good of the order from anyone? All right, well, we are going to then adjourn. I get the gavel. Very exciting. 7:21. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Good night all.